Hi everyone! This week's work that has been set is all about the elves and the shoemaker. So, I am going to read you this story and it might help you with your work this week. Okay. I hope you can see the pictures. There was once a poor shoemaker and his wife. "This is my last piece of leather," said the shoemaker sadly. "I can make only one more pair of shoes." The shoemaker cut out the leather and put it on his workbench. He and his wife went to bed. The next morning, the old shoemaker found a new pair of shoes on his workbench. "Who has made these shoes?" asked the shoemaker. He put them in the shop window. A man saw the shoes. He came into the shop and tried them on. "I like these shoes," said the man. "I will buy them from you." Now the old shoemaker could buy more leather. He cut out the workbench. Then he went to bed. The next morning, there was a new pair of boots and a new pair of shoes on the workbench. "Who has made these boots and shoes?" asked the shoemaker's wife. The old shoemaker soon sold both pairs of shoes. Now, he could buy even more leather. He cut out the leather and went to bed. The next morning he found 8 new pairs of boots and shoes, and so it went on for weeks and weeks. Everyone liked his boots and shoes. Soon the shoemaker and his wife were rich, but they still didn't know who was making the shoes, so they made a plan. The old shoemaker cut out the leather. He put it on his workbench, but this time he and his wife didn't go to bed. They hid instead. "Now we will see who makes the shoes," said the shoemaker. The old shoemaker and his wife waited. At last the shop door opened and 2 tiny elves ran in. They jumped up onto the workbench and sewed the leather as fast as they could. Like magic, the shoes were finished. The elves danced a little jig on the workbench. Tip, tip, tap. Then they jumped down. The elves ran away into the night. "Those elves are very kind to us," said the shoemaker. "Yes," said his wife, "but their clothes are old and thin. They must be so cold." The shoemaker nodded his head. "The winter snow is on the ground and they don't even have any shoes," he said. "How can we help the elves?" said the shoemaker's wife. The next day the shoemaker and his wife set to work. They made 2 tiny coats, 2 tiny pairs of trousers and 2 tiny pairs of shoes. Everything was just the right size for the tiny elves. The shoemaker and his wife put the presents on the workbench. Then they waited and waited. At last the shop door opened and in ran the 2 tiny elves. They jumped up onto the workbench and saw the presents. They danced a little jig. Tip, tip, tap. 2 for you and 2 for me. The tiny elves put on the tiny clothes. "They are just right," they said. They danced a little jig all along the workbench. Tip, tip, tap. "Thank you," they called as they jumped down. The tiny elves did another jig on their way out of the shop. Tip, tip, tap. And there you go. I hope that helps you with your work today. And I look forward to seeing all of the things that you've been doing. Take care. Bye.